Hey guys, I'm going to walk you through how to crush each part of the Uniform Bar Exam, or UBE. The goal is that this 3-part series will be the most comprehensive, valuable compilation of tips and tricks that you can find online. If you find these videos as helpful as we hope they'll be, please hit us with a like and subscribe and share. Also, don't hesitate to ask questions in the comments below. Okay, we'll start with big picture before diving deep. The first thing you need to know is that the UBE is 3 times longer than the LSAT. It takes 2 solid days, and you only get scheduled breaks every 3 hours. It's a mental marathon, but nothing you can't handle with strategic and diligent preparation. The UBE tests your understanding of generally applicable laws and attorney skills. That means you don't need to know state-specific laws unless told otherwise. The UBE has 3 parts: the ME, MPT, and MBE. The ME is essays, the MPT is performance-based, the MBE is multiple choice. The first day you tackle the writing, 6 30-minute essays in the morning, 2 90-minute performance tests in the afternoon. The second day, you get back-to-back 3-hour sessions of 100 multiple choice questions. Most of your prep time should focus on the multiple choice. Some theories are floating around that graders are more lenient on the ME and MPT when someone has a solid MBE score. Theories like that may or may not be complete bunk. Regardless, we do know 3 things that should make you focus on the MBE. First, the multiple choice is 50% of your total score. Second, you're guaranteed 25 graded questions on each MBE subject. No surprises. And third, the topics tested can pop up on the essays too. That means every MBE subject you crush, you're guaranteed MBE points, and maybe even some MEE points. Now, the MEE, or essays, are your next priority. Worth 30% of your score, but you have no guarantee which topics will pop up. Now, I know some test takers will waste a ton of time analyzing which subjects were tested at different times in the past and speculating about what seems likely in the future. But at the end of the day, all people can do is guess. The reality is 12 subjects are fair game and almost any combo is possible on the 6 essays. Prepare to conquer all the topics tested on the MEE. Finally, you should normally spend the least amount of time prepping for the performance tests because they only count for 20% of your score and you don't have to memorize any substantive law for them. I say normally because if the MPT is a major pain point for you, you struggle processing a lot of information and synthesizing and applying that information within tight time constraints, you may need to do a bunch of practice performance test questions to perform well. But remember, at the end of the day, the MPT is still only 20% of your score, and thankfully, you don't have to memorize any laws to ace it. Okay, 2 foundational principles before we dive into the nitty-gritty. Start early and pace yourself. If you're studying full-time or close to it, you should start about 2 months before the exam. If part-time, you'll obviously need to start a little earlier. Regardless, take regular breaks and avoid studying more than 40 hours a week. You may have heard of the law of diminishing returns. Well, it applies in studying as much as it does in economics. Be diligent, but not manic. Now let's dig into each part of the UBE. We'll talk about the MBE now in this video and address the MEE and MPT in follow-up videos. MBE tip number 1, competence before practice. There is nothing that will stress you out more than doing practice questions prematurely and getting demoralizing score after demoralizing score. Tip number 2, study the right subjects. What are the right MBE subjects? Civil procedure, constitutional law, contracts, criminal law and procedure, evidence, real property, and torts. And each matters equally. Tip number 3, study the right content within each subject. What's the right content? Well, the NCBE, the company that makes the UBE, actually tells you. No, the NCBE does not spell out the actual laws tested, but it does give you the subtopics within each subject that could come up. And the NCBE gives you the rough exam emphasis of each MBE subtopic. Hopefully, you find a bar prep course that addresses the NCBE specified subtopics and gives the appropriate emphasis. If you're using Crushendo, you can take confidence in knowing that Crescendo's outlines are structured to closely mirror the NCBE's outline structure. Though I should add that Crushendo starts each MBE outline with the most emphasized subject and then works through the others from there, and sometimes adjusts organization in other ways for pedagogical purposes while still covering the bases. Tip number 4, use accurate prep materials. You're asked to know the current, generally applicable law. Though free outlines abound online, make sure you're using something from a credible source that maintains its material. Tip number 5, use mnemonics. Mnemonic is just a fancy word for memory hook. The MBE is like walking into 7 closed book multiple choice finals, back to back to back. Unless you have a near photographic memory, you're gonna need a way to string everything together. This is why Crushendo uses hundreds of memory hooks. I promise not to talk too much about Crushendo in this, but it's important for you to know that we practice what we preach. If you don't use Crushendo, try to make your own mnemonics. Tip number 6, use flashcards or have a friend quiz you or both. Before you test your application of knowledge by taking actual practice questions, you need to test your knowledge through flashcards or something similar to help things gel. This is why Crushendo provides not just flashcards, but audio flashcards affectionately called Crema Time. Tip number 7, listen, listen, listen. Listen to your outlines over and over again while doing what you enjoy. You cannot sit at a screen all day, especially during a beautiful summer day, or if you're taking the winter bar when you could be on the ski slopes. It will crush your soul. If your bar prep course does not have audio outlines, buy Crescendos or record your own. Audio outlines are that valuable. Tip number 8, chunk it up. Start by studying one subject at a time, one subtopic at a time. Think of studying for the bar like building with Lego bricks. You don't half assemble a dude, then half build a wall, and then half build a car. You build in chunks or everything becomes a heap of chaos. Memory's like that too. Again, not trying to talk too much about Crescendo, but Crescendo's audio outlines are broken into roughly 5-minute tracks that you can listen to on repeat before trying to memorize the next track. If you record your own outlines, make sure to break your recordings into digestible, repeatable chunks. Tip number 9, once you've memorized an outline for a subject, take some subject-specific practice questions. This will help you confirm competence before moving to another subject and further aid in chunking, putting information in the right buckets in your brain. Tip number 10, regularly review memorized material. Regularly means at least weekly. Tip number 11, use reliable practice questions. The NCBE, again, the company that makes the UBE, also sells practice questions. They're invaluable. Crushendo has a licensing agreement with the NCBE to use all its practice questions. You can buy directly from the NCBE or you can buy them for cheaper through Crushendo. Tip number 12, leave no question behind. Wrong answers hurt as bad as blanks. Tip number 13, 1 for 1. Choose only one answer per question. If you select multiple, you get no points, period. Tip number 14, choose the best answer. Don't hunt for the perfect one. You only need the best answer. Tip number 15, nail your timing. 102 seconds, a minute and 42 seconds. That's how much time you realistically have per MBE question. Technically, you have 108 seconds, but shaving off 6 seconds will give you 10 minutes of flex time during each 3-hour session. Your bladder won't have to explode, diarrhea won't destroy you, and you may even be able to double check some answers. By the way, Crescendo's timed practice quizzes and exams train you to keep the 102-second pace. On exam day, flag questions 35 and 70. Get through 35 in the first hour and you'll be right on track. Then try to get through 70 in the second hour. If you take a break during the second hour, just make sure to finish 70 by 2 hours and 10 minutes into the exam. Tip number 16, passing, not perfection. Your target should be around 70% correct on practice MBE questions. Obviously, higher scores won't hurt, but you should feel pretty confident if you're sitting in the 70s. Tip number 17, avoid absolutes. The law, rarely, always, or nevers. Answers suggesting a black and white world are usually red flags. Tip number 18, evade the unfamiliar. Test writers like to make up new Latin terms, rules, and exceptions. If you're reasonably competent in an area, odds are that anything that sounds completely unfamiliar is an evil trick. Tip number 19, if a question's tough, rule out the easy non-answers. If you narrow it down to 2 possible right answers, just pick the first one and move on. If you're too much of a perfectionist on tough questions, you can burn time and sabotage odds on the easier ones. Tip number 20, just because an answer seems obvious doesn't mean it's wrong. Sometimes a question can mess with your mind by being a little too easy. Tip number 21, remember, right answers don't contradict the facts. Tip number 22, the devil is in the details. Read fast but carefully. Normally, every word matters. If 2 answers feel correct, odds are you misread part of the question. Tip number 23, issue before facts. Read the actual question before the facts. This will help you read the facts with an eye for what actually matters. Tip number 24, dissect your mistakes. When you miss a question, figure out why. Tip number 25, stay centered. If you feel like the floor is falling out, take a deep breath and clear your mind before pressing on. And last but not least, tip number 26, use common sense. Part of common sense is not overthinking it. Alrighty, one last general word of advice that applies to all 3 parts of the bar exam. Make time for family, friends, and even service. Don't obsess about the bar or yourself. If you keep your life in balance, yes, it is possible that you'll fail the bar. But at least you won't fail at life. And frankly, you're more likely to fail the bar if you're failing at life. So keep a healthy and happy balance. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to be the first to know when we drop our MEE and MPT tip videos. They're going to be gold mines. If you thought this was helpful, please hit the thumbs up, comment, and share. By the way, if you want to download the audio for this video and listen to it again, create a free account at crushendo.net. Until next time, happy cramming.